Hey everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew Larosiere, and I'm here with my co-host, Shawn Herrin, and a homeless guy who found the show link and won't leave the lobby.
Can't kick him.
Y'all need to thank me, by the way, because I got so sick of this show not being in my podcast list that I actually rebuilt it.
I think I even told that story on one of the episodes.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah. But for those of you who haven't heard it, actually, I was visiting Othais.
Well, hold on. I'm Othais, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I want to clarify that for the audio listeners.
Yeah, before we do that, Othais, like, who are you and what is your purpose in this realm?
I'm a fat man in the South who has a bunch of guns in my little room, and I talk about them on the internet.
I love it.
I wish I could do that.
That's very well done. Very well done, sir.
But yeah, I run See an Arsenal, which is a historical weapons show. We do long form content, so nobody likes that, which means we have very few subscribers, but nuts to them. I do what I want.
Yeah, I like it. It's actually, it's the only historical firearm content that I watch, period. Full stop.
Don't tell Ponytail that. But no, we're the show that people always want to watch when they already own that firearm. If you own a firearm, you really hope there's a See an Arsenal episode about it, because then you don't have to go buy a book or whatever.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So in the beginning, I would watch all your videos, and then when the Dutch Mannlicher series came out, I was like, I cannot do this with this frequency and intensity, and so then I became one of those who but no, I came back though, and especially Repercussion is a fantastic series.
Which is us taking on black powder firearms that are currently reproduced.
Yeah.
So that way we can use, modern. I don't have to go get an original Colt Patterson that's worth, $20,000 and try to somehow shoot that, because I don't even see how the heck that would work. Well,
and also it would give you very little indication of how it shot when it was new.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Some of it's very speculative, but
but that's fine, and it kind of lets you, because of the fact you're talking about a spaghetti reproduction. So these guns are pretty much all made in Italy. So they, it's not wood; it's just dried spaghetti that they sand to shape. Right. But it lets him have kind of a little bit more creative freedom. This is my analysis, by the way. This is not what he says. I feel like it gives him more creative freedom and lets him kind of be more himself. And I really love the program, and I think any of you guys would love it too.
Yeah,
and it'll make you want to buy a little stupid piece of garbage.
Yeah, we're also having fun going into Colts, because a lot of people think they know something about Colt, and then you start telling stories about Samuel Colt himself. Or even the one that really broke wide open this time. Well, not broke wide open. It's been a long-standing story in collector circles, but most people weren't aware of it. Was the R.L. Wilson controversy in the 70s and 80s, in which a man defrauded the Connecticut Museum. And so we did a big, almost 2-hour-long podcast with Danny from Cody Firearms. And he walked us through all the details of that very recent fraud that has kind of ruined the ability to understand collectible firearms to a degree. We've had to restart our understanding in some ways because of that man. And that ended up being repeated by Ian over at Forgotten Weapons. And so now that's been a big topic that everybody's sort of just realizing was it used to be this thing that only collectors knew about, but now it's become a much larger story.
Yeah, and that's the thing that always kept me away from the old revolvers, especially the old American stuff, because I felt like you needed a degree to know.
Well, so the problem with old American stuff, and truly antique American stuff, not mass-produced military stuff, but the old Colt revolvers and things like that, is that they had become a sort of speculative market. The prices are very high. That became sort of a rock star of the collecting world was the Colt revolvers, but then the actual understanding of them was very low. And so that knowledge was concentrated on only a handful of individuals, and it wasn't shared it was very pre-internet, not very egalitarian in the way the knowledge was presented and understood. And you had this very modernist, not necessarily postmodern, it was this very modernist linear structure to it. So it was very easy to manipulate that market, and it was manipulated. And a lot of people sort of smell that, even if they don't know the whole story, and they just stayed out of it. And so we're kind of seeing the collapse of the Colt market recently because the prices are finally coming down because the people that did want those guns are aging out and the younger generations haven't picked up on them.
Well, yeah, and it's partly because all of this information has been so centralized that us, our generations of collectors, I'm a collector too, you can probably tell by the completely idiotic firearms I have on my wall. But I would love to have some of these old Colts, but I just felt completely excluded. Whereas with Milsurp stuff, I was able to get into it. And I mean, and you can tell just by listening to this homeless guy talk about these revolvers for half a second, like it's not very often that I feel illiterate when listening to somebody talk, and just your, your recapitulation of the stuff that's going wrong makes me go, oh Jesus, I want nothing to do.
Right?
Yeah, if you had $1,000 right now, I could not tell you a book to buy that would make you, even with extreme study, would make you capable of smartly investing money in Colt revolvers today. You'd have to be in that market for many years and know people personally to really understand what you're buying. And since those people are dying off, that's an unsustainable market as it is. It needs to be opened up a little bit in terms of the information, or else it won't have investors in the future.
What do you think is the limit of that market and the way it's dying? I think it goes as far as, and I'm sorry, I promise we'll get to the show in a minute, but I think that market goes as far as like Krag carbines and Winchesters. Or do you think that this, like, I see those dropping in price?
I think it's mostly percussion.
Okay.
I think when people start to talk about the Krags and especially like the old single shot trapdoors and stuff like that, those markets can reinflate just fine. I think it's very specific to percussion era, because we are only just now on the internet, this late into the internet, are we really starting to see people who are involved in the gross collecting community starting to argue out things about, did they grease the ball? What did they grease the ball with? Like I know that seems insane as something that would affect collecting value, but that's an indicator for how poorly understood that period of history is. And people's perception of truth has a lot to do with their perception of value. And we're just now hashing out the truths of it. However, the previous generation, the quote unquote boomers, they believe that
hate it.
Well, they are much. It's literally the modernist versus postmodernist thinking in this regard. The modernists believe that experience and positional power meant truth, because at that time you didn't have internet, you didn't have this ability to have this massive conversation, and so you had to trust an authority figure, and you would have a small number of recognized authorities. And that was rife for abuse, but it was also a good way to get all the information to one guy who might actually be an authority. So there are authorities from that era that are actual authorities, and then there are fakes from that era. And unfortunately, in the Colt market, a fake got very high up and really scrambled everything. And given the limited, there are guys in that era that knew everything that we need to know, but they didn't necessarily write it down. They didn't necessarily communicate it to more than 10 people. And now it's gotten lost in this sort of like, it's about as reliable as oral history. Right. You can get the sheen of it, but you don't necessarily get the details because it's oral history. You can't prove it out, Mm-hmm. And those collections have since been broken up and spread out because of that fraud. And so it's very hard to get proof, even from doing sort of like the archaeological thing of going over the pieces and stuff, because those pieces are scattered all over the world. Right. Some of them have been lost entirely, and we don't know where they are.
Technology.
So there's a lot of claims out there, but we don't know, because there was also manipulation in the market too. Literally, firearms are believed to have been engraved in the modern era and then sold as if they were engraved back then, and that really ruins your ability to understand what's going on.
Right. Okay, so I definitely want to keep talking to you about this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is supposed to be This Week in Guns, and not this century in guns.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fine. I really enjoyed that. I apologize to anyone in the audience who's not a massive nerd. I watched Shawn finish his whiskey.
I was like, I don't have a whole lot of perspective in this, but I do enjoy the talk. In fact, I think of Othias every night when I go to bed, because in my bedroom,
several reasons.
Yeah, a lot of reasons. In my bedroom, I actually have big, huge posters that are really nicely framed of his anatomy of rifles and pistols for World War II and the U.S. M1911A1.
You see, he thinks about them every night as he struggles to remember what guns they.
Well, you see them every single day, and I'm like, I know that they're all there, and I know that they're framed. I just don't remember specifically which ones. But those are the three.
I don't remember who I live with either.
Yeah, those are the three.
I think about those images all the time, but for a very different reason.
Right.
Oh my god.
No, they're amazing. I love them.
You guys are done blowing smoke. We should probably talk about this week in guns.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay. So, did y'all see the new episode of House of Cards last night?
Yes, actually.
What the heck? This season has really gone off the rails, huh? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I saw something today that said, okay, I've tried the 7-day trial of 2021. Not interested. I'd like to cancel.
I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's a tough topic because I think it affects the gun community very strongly.
Yeah.
And of course, if anybody's curious and you're listening this way late and you're confused, where we're filming now, we are exactly like not even 24 hours out. I shouldn't say exactly, but we're not even 24 hours after the events of the raid at DC.
Mm-hmm.
Or as I think I called it, was the Great Congressional Candy Raid, because one of them like broke into one of the desks and found like a bunch of candy.
Nice.
They only give that candy to people who they actually like. I got for that candy.
It was like a
really
grandma desk full of candy. It's like one of the most remarkable images. But
it's like the desk.
It's really good.
The desk of Dolores Umbridge.
I wasn't there. I don't know, but it looks like essentially protesters managed to gain entry into, I forget the specific building because it has a name. Is it Madison? Is that what I'm thinking of?
There's multiple congressional complexes, and they're not really.
But which one did they get into? Was it Madison? I don't. I can't recall. But
they're all named so boringly.
Right. So anyway. So they get in, and if somebody said to me, it's like, imagine you get to the end level and you go into the main boss arena and there's no main boss and you wander around for 2 hours and leave.
Yes.
Because they just sort of wander in and then nothing really happens. They just meme and take selfies and stuff.
Right.
And then in a few key places they tried to enter secured areas, and one woman, I believe, was shot and killed.
Yes.
For trying to climb through a window in a secure area. At least that's the current understanding. That could change.
Right. All right. So do we tackle that?
So
why not?
I don't know what to tackle. So my problem with that situation is I don't know what the secure area is. I don't know what's on the other side. I don't know what the guy with the gun was thinking. I don't know enough to make a commentary on that, other than it's not very good looking from the outside to have an unarmed woman shot in a public building. A lot of people will say, well, she knowingly breached a heart of government and their security measures in place. And some people will say that that's not enough. She needed to actually be a clear and present threat. And that's an argument for the people that want to talk about what sort of authority you have as a police officer, security officer. You know what I mean? That's less guns and more ethics on personal defense versus building or defense. Because we don't know what was on the other side. It was a barricaded door. We literally don't know what was on the other side of it, other than we can see a little video of some guy on the other side of it. But who's behind him? You know what I mean? And
Wasn't
then
the main chamber?
Huh?
Wasn't it the main chamber?
I don't know what hallway
so.
that was. I'm not that deep into what happened. And I'm really, anyway, we're getting way into trying to analyze something that we don't know enough about.
You're right. Yeah.
And the other, there's people that are going to condemn it and people are going to say that it was warranted. And I don't know that you can make either call as the information is to me right now. If somebody knows better later, then I'm sorry if you've heard more since I've recorded this. I will say I've noticed people teaming, and I kind of had to step in on some friends and stuff and say, unfortunately, what's happened now, the truth of what has happened now and the reason this is overflowing is because the significant number of people do not believe in the elective process. So the vote is no longer secure to a number of people. You may believe that the vote is secure and that they are insane. You may believe that the vote was absolutely stolen and that the other side are criminals. I don't personally care, because as a society, in a way that benefits everybody, I think what we need to understand and we need to be working for is exactly what nobody's talking about, which is that people need to feel that their vote counts. Because if you do not feel your vote counts, then you have to take all that political energy and put it somewhere else. And that, of course, is going to lead to violence. The United States is an adversarial process. To good effect. Like, that's the sort of the brilliance of the United States, is that we've taken the adversarial, selfish process and turned it into something that works. Because that's sort of the guaranteed nature of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is while you may hate the other side, you have to trust the mechanism. Now, if you believe that the mechanism is not trusted because of rhetoric, okay. If you believe that the mechanism is not trusted because of lies, okay. But if you believe that the mechanism is not trusted because the mechanism has glaring holes in it in specific states that had measures that made it impossible to audit those processes, that's okay too. Like, realistically, all of that, to my mind, can be solved by transparent and open investigation and making sure that everybody understands the rules of voting. And what happened with COVID again, conspiracy or no conspiracy, I don't care. COVID changed the way we vote so radically and quickly that we lost the auditing process in several states. Mm-hmm. If you read the Texas lawsuit, they actually clarify which states and why. I don't want to get too deep into it. But essentially, we lost our ability to do an instant audit of whether or not certain ballots were valid or not. There's all sorts of arguments about swapping votes digitally, stealing votes, double counting votes. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm saying at the very core of this is an inability to attach a ballot to an individual person. And the reason that separation exists is for voter privacy, which is good. You want voter privacy. You don't necessarily want everybody to know your vote so that you can vote confidently without fear of being punished, But there's also no real way, once they're sort of separated, to get that vote tracked back to you to make sure that you only voted once.
Right.
And because we've never built a mechanism for that, we've left a window in which, and also for other reasons, there's other reasons in which the laws were changed right at the 11th hour. People were set up in ways that they didn't have to provide ID, whatever the case may be. There is now room for doubt. I'm not saying that fraud happened. I'm saying that there is room for people to believe that there could be fraud.
Right.
And if you leave room for that belief, and
there's
enough
room
people,
for a rational belief is what you're saying.
Right. There is room in which non-auditable votes could exceed the margin of victory, which is what happened here. We have numbers of votes in excess that are we have confusing numbers of votes that are in excess of the win margin. At that point, you are going to invite conspiracy theory. It does not mean that there was a fraud. It doesn't mean anything by scientific proof, but that's the whole problem, is because you've set up a situation in which you can't prove one way or the other, and therefore doubt creeps in. Now, if only 5% of the population decided that this made them doubt the election, we wouldn't really have a problem. But a very significant portion of the population now no longer believes in the vote. So when you tell them, if you don't like Biden's win, you can vote for somebody next time, they're going to say, no, I can't. And they're going to think that the only way that they can take back control of their life is through extra political means. And so in this case, we're seeing a raid in DC. It's not good. Like, I don't want this from either side. I think that both sides should be talking about and negotiating on how to make people trust the next vote in 2 years. That needs to be the number one conversation for the next 2 years, because if the United States doesn't have trust in its vote, we are going to have more political violence. And I'm not saying this as a threat or that I want this. It's just the truth. You have to trust the vote, and you can't just demand blind faith.
What would make you trust the vote? I mean, reasonable doubt. Like, there's things that can't be explained to this point, but like, when you say that, like, what would the things be that would help you to have more faith in the process?
It's just redundancy. I think if anybody works in the scientific fields, you know that there's a certain expectation of. So if you, I know people that work in places where they have to have FDA approval on, medical technologies, right? Mm-hmm. The FDA is very specific about chain of custody. So if you have something that's under testing and there's sort of a blank in the sheet and it leaves sort of an identifiable person's custody, then that is no longer valid. They don't like that, Mm-hmm. At least as far as I understand it. I'm not in that field, but that's how it's been explained to me. But there's been a lot of times in the voting process where things sort of leave custody or go into hands that we're not sure who, and then everybody says, no, it's okay. I promise it's this way, but there's no auditable trail. That's just one example. Other examples is, I can't remember which state, but they had a provision, which is actually a nice provision. If you're medically infirm and you cannot get an ID, then you could vote on this one specific form. Because of the way it was worded, they decided to use that for COVID. And so what normally had maybe 10,000, 20,000 people using it had hundreds of thousands of people now sending in ballots without any sort of any proof of identification. And those numbers were within margin of whatever, and that makes people alarmed. Does that mean that everybody who did that was fraudulent? No. Does it mean that even one was fraudulent? No, you can't say it. You're proving a negative. You can't prove it was fraudulent. You can't prove it wasn't fraudulent. And if you actually read the Texas lawsuit, that's what they were saying. They were saying we can't audit this. They're not saying we saw fraud. I mean, to a degree, they're coloring it like fraud, but the actual claims were not fraud. The claims were there is a margin of error that could allow fraud, essentially. And I think what we need to do is we need to just make sure that we can come up with a mechanism. I put it this way. You can have Bitcoin. You know what I mean? You have a Bitcoin wallet. You can keep track of your Bitcoin. It's all somehow anonymized, and yet you can absolutely keep track of it. And it's a currency. But you can't cast your vote and then go online and check that your vote was counted and which way it was counted.
Right.
Even that is, don't get me wrong, that can be manipulated. But
it increases security. Like
it increases your, even if not security, it increases your trust. You know what I mean? Like
of security.
Right. You can at least say, well, look, the computer says my vote was counted this way. You know what I mean? You have a receipt, essentially, which we don't currently, you don't get anything when you go, I mean, at least here. I mean, I got a little sticker that says I voted. I have no other evidence of my vote. And
here in my county, we have a system that tells you basically, well, and I always vote absentee because I don't want to go and like look at other fleshoids, and I've done that since long before COVID. Right. But there is a way to online track your ballot. But only if you had already been registered to get it. Right? And so then the people who last minute got their ballots, it was a different story. And I know plenty of people, like actually my girlfriend, she had registered right before the cutoff, registered for mail-in. She got her actual, one, and she had registered Libertarian. I don't know whether that has anything to do with it or not. And you know how many ballots she got? Two. Yeah. And of course, she only voted once. Right. But there are plenty of less scrupulous people out there, right? And I don't know. And I am, I was ready.
You would hope the system would catch that.
Right.
You know what I mean? If she tried voting twice, you think the system would go, well, hold on. This person's name's not Belinda Smith. Yeah. It's Linda Smith and Belinda Smith are not the same person. But the problem is the way we have it now, as far as I understand it, most states are only relying on signature verification, which I will point out, I agree is not a great thing because people's signatures do change. Right. And it's not and also it's very subjective. Like having a person just sort of say, oh, these signatures do or don't match gives that person a lot of leeway into how to count votes.
For sure.
So I don't know that signature verification. Yeah, and it's funny because, defensively you would say, well, they shouldn't count the unverified signatures because that's exactly how you would have fraud. But then on the other side, it's like you could lose some very real votes. Right. And so what that tells you is that's just not a very good system.
Let me interrupt you. So like in my case, my signature changed because I had a motorcycle accident and crippled my writing hand.
Right.
And
you still would like your vote to count.
Probably, yeah. So the other interesting point I would like to make is that I am a career libertarian, but I am registered in Florida as one of the mainstream political parties. You guys, I'll leave that up to you guys which one, but I only got one.
Interesting.
Yeah. And my girlfriend, who is registered
as something else.
But
see, the problem is when you don't have an easily auditable system, because the problem is right now I know people are going, we could audit it. And to be fair, that's kind of what Texas was requesting. They were requesting more investigation because there's not enough time to audit the system the way the system is currently set up.
Right.
You can't do an instant audit. You can't do a 24, 48-hour audit the way it is, period. So if you think that Biden absolutely won the election, you should probably want to be able to prove that. And if you think Trump won the election, you would really want to be able to prove that. I think this is a nonpartisan issue. I think we have not had our vote keep up with the pace of technology and access and the number of people in the population. And the more we get politically heated, the more we sort of become combative politically, the more secure we should treat the vote and the more serious we should treat it. I like it. Somebody else was telling me, what, because somebody was arguing voter ID and things like that. And I said, look, here's my understanding of it. Whatever you require me to do to get onto an airplane to travel between two states should be valid for requiring me to vote. And that's really uncomfortable because they ask you to do a lot to get on an airplane. Right. But which is more important?
Too much.
Riding in an airplane or the validity of the vote? Like, which has more weight?
Let me play devil's advocate. Everything you're saying, and guys out there, don't get mad at me. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm doing it on purpose. All right?
He's literally the devil.
The greatest. Anyway, everything you're saying is valid only if you accept democracy as a legitimate form of government.
Oh, you mean the way it's written?
Yes.
But that's the rule book we're supposed to be playing by. If you want to create another government...
Well, no, I'm saying, not of course, Democratic, Republican, all this stuff, but so what if, and again, devil's advocate, guys, don't...
Oh, there we go.
What if the system that we're using was designed for like the 1600s where only very, very few people voted, and thus this wasn't a huge problem because if it was, it was never designed to encounter these kinds of issues. It was never designed to have these kinds of razorsome problem, outcomes.
Not only that, but it also until very recently, it probably was not very likely that you had the entire region split 50-50 so often. Because usually you would vote as a block because you would vote the same sort of values as your community because your communities were isolated. We have a nomad class in the United States now, especially because you see a lot of people leaving northern states or California, and they're moving into everybody I know in southern states or western states are like, here they come. And all of a sudden the politics are much more divided.
Colorado's a prime example.
Yeah, luckily I live in an area that's been diverse for a very long time, weirdly, because I live in Charleston, South Carolina, which Poe called the Holy City by the Sea because there's so many different churches. So the culture here is to actually not really talk politics all that often because it's always been a mix of not just red and blue, but all sorts of beliefs. But there's a lot of areas where they've been guaranteed for a certain party or a certain ideal, but they've recently started importing people. And yeah, Shawn was saying he's in Colorado where this is becoming more and more apparent. And so when you have split votes within a region, then you start having people being more and more concerned about who is counting their votes and how those votes are being counted. And I think we're seeing people realize how poorly we've updated this system.
Well, no, it's that we haven't updated the system.
Right. Now, of course, this is being expressed as support of Trump because Trump is the sort of canary of this situation.
Right. But we have to go all the way back. We have to understand that, we're alluding to it. But the way this system was written and broken out was to handle different economic, not even classes, but economic segments of the country. It was meant to handle the growing and developing industrial city versus the agricultural sector, right?
Right.
And so we're dealing with a system that was designed to handle this obvious, like these obviously diametrically opposed, well, not diametrically opposed, but obviously opposed in terms of interests, groups. And now we have people that will work the same job, but have a 180-degree divergence on matters of policy that are relevant to that particular election. Whereas in the early days of our country, that just didn't happen. Like the policies were a lot simpler.
And by the way, I want to point out, they still fought about them.
They did.
To the point of blows, to the point of riots, to the point. I mean, look at Jackson politics alone. This is not. Everybody keeps saying this is unprecedented, and it's not.
No,
it's not even unprecedented in the past year, if I'm being honest. But
the lack of homogeny is unprecedented.
Well, I think we're seeing the balkanization of the U.S. because we're seeing clashes of a number of things. We're seeing modernism post with postmodernism. We're seeing identity politics emerge. We've really lost the thread.
Reemerge.
Yeah, that's true. And we've lost the thread of meritocracy. We are also having strong arguments about economics and whether or not economics is a zero-sum game or not. There's a lot of argument there. I mean, we could go on for hours just on what is really dividing, and it's being forced into two categories of Democrat versus Republican, but it's not really how it's breaking down.
That doesn't work at all. You can be a person, and I frequently meet people like this that believe that money itself is a Satan, that the concept of wealth is bad, but are the most hardcore individual, like, libertarian people you'll ever meet.
Right.
They want to be so these, like, anarcho communist types.
Right.
And
well, to be fair, what's going to
I like that. It's not built to handle that.
To be fair, it's going to be whether or not you believe the government. So it's very interesting. But if you're a communist, like as in you want a commune that is very small and personally controlled, you would almost prefer an entirely hands-off government because it would let you just do that socially. So the question is, what do you do? Like, how much should the government do what you wanted to do, and how much should you be allowed to do? Should you organize it? Like, are you legally allowed to have your own cult? I guess is the way to think about it. And so, long ago in the early Americas, people were very spread out. The Mormons tried to found Deseret, a multi-state empire. You know what I mean? And they were a government unto themselves, but still nominally under the United States government. And there's still evidence of that today if you understand modern Mormonism. Yep. And so that was perfectly normal, though, back then. Like, it wasn't even like that was weird. The church had a different role back then. And so I think we're dealing with the modernization of America in some regards. And we've sort of left, it's very interesting, but we've left a lot of people behind in the sense that they don't feel that they are being heard.
Right.
And that's being made manifest on both sides. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, the big thing here, and I think, and this is a way to, well, hold on, let me ask you a question first. If Deseret had succeeded, would they have adopted the MDR?
I'm not that clear. I mean, anything to be insular, probably, but
even though it doesn't work.
Yeah, but as long as it's of the people, but it's fine. It's just
no, they would have probably made them fix the charging handle.
It works.
Yeah,
it's one of those things. Like, I'm sorry, and we're so far down the line, but I think this is critically important for gun people to hear, because Matt and I get along on one point, which is that the gun industry as a whole is, and not the gun industry, the gun culture as a whole is suffering from a complete lack of clear policy.
Oh yeah.
We don't always know what we want. And you guys all know you may even be the guy that's just shouting on Facebook that you hate the libs or whatever the case may be. And that the problem with that othering is that you're not actually trying to communicate with other human beings. There are things that people can get along, and I think the vote is one of them in this case. And I think it is. I know people want to blame Trump, and they want to say "Yay Trump" or "Boo Trump" and "Yay Pelosi" or "Boo Pelosi" or whatever the case may be. These people are small; they're tiny compared to the will of the people. And then the will of the people is dictated by the perception of the people, which is why they fight so hard for media control and all these other things. Like the media war, the culture war is now starting to have manifest results. And it's driving.
We're going in on one of those results that'll tie us back to the raid, I think.
Yeah.
So, I'm really with a lot of what you're saying. And one of the big, I think, casualties of this current culture war is, and I mean, for those of you audio listeners, I am like the most racially ambiguous person you'll ever see.
You had a comment on one of your Facebook videos that was like, "What kind of black are you? Are you brown?" Like, it was.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused. But your voice and your nose are white, but your beard and your hair is black. And am I a racist?
No, he almost seemed concerned. He's like, "Did you know that your hair is black, my fellow white person?"
And growing up in South Florida, it was great because I get to hear every different language, right? Because everybody would just assume I was one of their group, and I'd hear all kinds of language.
Oh yeah.
But the people, and so I've made friends with everybody because I'm kind of allowed to assimilate with all these different racial groups, which I think is I view it as an advantage that I have. But the white working class man in this country is completely disenfranchised. Like, and I think
he said working class, Shawn, as you try to wave at the camera.
I'm working class.
How many HKs do you own? Get out of here. Boosh.
0. Oh, that's not true. I own a couple VP9s. But that's HKs for the poors.
Okay, all right.
Well, first of all, I'm not. No, Shawn is poor. That's fine. But I said working. He's poor because he don't work. No, just kidding.
Where is the unifying voice for the TIG welder who like lives in Appalachia?
Donald Trump.
It was Trump.
It was.
And by the way, I want to point this out. I'm exposing myself a little politically to say this. He wasn't what I would call a great choice because he was a millionaire or whatever. Like whether you like the man or not, you have to admit he's not a blue collar guy. But because he came in and just wasn't a politician and just wasn't playing, the one thing he did not do, and they keep accusing him of this, and I have to admit it, the one thing he did not do was play the racial politics or the gender politics. Like you just don't hear it from them. They say dog whistles. Right. If you hear dog whistles, I'm very sorry. I must be deaf to them. I'm not a dog. But that was all it took. And I think in many ways he is mediocre at best. But just to have a chance at being heard, everybody latched onto him, which tells you that people feel like they've been lost.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it even resonated with me. And, and I'm not going to say anything about my politics. I'm going to leave it all to your guys' imagination. But me, to see somebody, because I'm somebody who's never really had a racial identity, to see somebody that can be in that position and never talk about race and stuff, I'm like, I can jive with this, I'm with it. But like I was saying, why are you laughing?
Because that was
I'm sorry. It was in my. Do you want me to tell you?
It was just the whitest thing ever.
Weebs become a racial identity. You'll have.
Oh my God! Get that is a very bad accusation to make on air. But anyway.
He says with his Animu mug.
Yeah, exactly.
You gave this to me.
I think I agree with what you're saying, Matthias. I think that people did latch on, and I think a lot of it had very little to do with Trump and the fact that he is, incredibly wealthy and kind of just a trash human being. It's that the other side, the side that so many of us just cannot comprehend and understand. The people that, just all the binary stuff and like social justice warrior stuff that we just really have a hard time wrapping our minds around. I think a lot of that, those people hated him so much that I think we rallied towards that because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And the people that we can't relate with in this country.
I sincerely, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. And I want to say that I am not a perfect person. I believe, and believe is what I mean, because I think too many people have gotten used to treating belief as truth. My theory, my understanding, which can change, is that the reason that the doors were kicked in last night is because people don't trust the vote. Not because they love Donald Trump and they want him as king. There are people who want that.
Yeah.
They're insane. And I think most of the right wing would say they're insane.
Yes.
However, I think also most of the right wing would say that they have doubts about the election processes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that there's fraud. It doesn't mean that they would even say there was fraud, but they would say that they have doubts about the vote. And I think we're being distracted by this sort of cult of Trump from what is really upsetting people. At the same time, that's why Black Lives Matter is a movement, because those people feel disenfranchised and left behind. Now, do they feel that way because they were, or because they were told to feel that way? I don't know. I just know that it's being driven that way in all directions. Every opposite side wants to completely deny each other.
Right.
Like, they don't want to have any conversation about it from either direction. And I know I'm saying this as if, both sides, we should come together. I don't know the correct answer to make us come together. I'm not trying to preach that I have the solution, that I'm the smart guy. All I can literally say is broken. Here's why it's broken. You don't have to be a mechanic to see you're dumping transmission fluid everywhere and there's a big crack, you know, in your transmission. You do have to be a mechanic to fix that.
Right.
It's always easier to break something than it is to fix it.
I know the answer.
Well, okay.
42?
What?
42?
Oh, so is this about transmissions or politics?
Well, both. That's how for those of you guys that don't know, that's how I begin my Fudbusters video. I explained that I'm a gun rights lawyer and auto mechanic. But no, it's just the scope of government, especially the scope of federal power, has increased to a disgusting level that it was never designed to do. Like, the fact that we have federal and look, I love animals. Okay, this is not me saying anything about animals like stuff. The fact that we have a federal animal cruelty thing is manic and insane and completely incompatible with our Constitution. There are things that they're supposed to be doing.
Was there a state that had lacked animal cruelty laws?
No.
Well, then I don't see why. That's the thing I think people forget. It's not that you don't want government to do something. It's which government do you want to?
Yeah.
Well, it's because the locus of power is purest, the closest to the beneficiary. All right, so Shawn, let me ask you.
Hold on. Before we get on this, is this going to be a full rant? Because this is still this
mini rant. Okay. So, and I'm gonna tell you guys about this is why the federal government. This is all getting to why the federal government is insanely overbroad. And that's the source of all of these problems. So, Shawn, there's $10 here, right? Somebody is going to spend that $10 for your benefit. In order, who would be the best person to spend that $10 to benefit you?
Me.
Okay, so that's okay. So you think it's you, number one? That's fine. Now, what about your mom? And then rate the people you, your mother, and your congressional representative. Who are going to get the money to spend
you may be touching on something that's more of a crux there, because depending on your relationship with your mother, you might say your federal representative.
Right, but I know a little bit about Shawn.
No, but that you may actually have touched on more than you realize.
Right,
like,
you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, your best friend or your federal representative. Okay, right. Give me the order, the best outcome. You, your best friend, your federal representative.
I've met Shawn's best friend, federal representative.
It's, it's me. And then clearly this is leading me on the easy path, right? It's me, and then my best friend, and then somewhere 10 billion items down the list is the federal representative.
And that's not because they're bad people, although they are bad people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't actually believe that, but yeah.
It's because they are so far from the benefits. Mm-hmm. The cost is so far from the benefit. And that's why the federal government was designed in our Constitution to have such limited powers. Because even when they founded this great new government that was going to be so fantastic, they're like, we know that we are completely incapable of doing like anything. So we are only going to be able to do like 8 things. And that's it. And then we went and broke it. And now that we're talking about having federal gun control, despite the whole shall not thing, that we're talking about federal, how many poppy seeds can you have in your bagel? All this crap on the federal level. It was supposed to be a homogenized government that would make those decisions. And then even, depending on how much of a federalist you are, some people even believe that the 14th Amendment wrecked the Constitution because, And so I don't. I actually believe the 14th Amendment perfected our government, but I have a lot of friends who rationally believe and assert that they ruined it because they want to live in a true laboratory of democracy. They don't want the state to be limited by anything.
You might want to explain the 14th for people.
The 14th Amendment is what binds state governments to the same restrictions that the federal government has, which is the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Before the 14th Amendment, the state of Florida could, if it existed, before the 14th Amendment, any state could say no guns, no talking. It would be okay because the only people who were bound by the Constitution were the federal government. And then the 14th Amendment applied all of those same rights, privileges, immunities, to
which is interesting. There's a whole potential argument there.
Right.
Too.
No, it's a valid argument, and they had this argument, and people beat the absolute crap out of each other.
Even beyond that, we also had an amendment to allow voting on senators,
right?
Because it used to be the states picked their. We expanded the vote.
Well, and also we do not have proportional representation either. there's so many broken things. Like there should be, I think if we followed the constitutional plan, we'd have like 3,000 senators or something.
Oh God, that's all we need.
Shall not exceed.
Right.
So we're living in the system is broken fundamentally because we've tolerated its breakages for over 100 years. And I think that it's,
well, I think we had a political system in which you did not necessarily upset the apple cart, you know, in order to have your fight. And now politics has become so zero sum that they're willing to twist themselves into using. They're willing to twist it. Like it used to be like they would look at this document and they go, oh, that's a vulnerability. And if I exploit that it will be exploited on me next. And we're going to break the system. And they had the self-control to say no.
Right.
We've lost that. Everybody will they think they're clever to throw everything at the problem to the point that victory matters above any damage they do.
Right.
On both sides.
Yep.
And we're seeing it.
Self-seeking. And I think it's because, and you know, both of you know, I say this all the time. I hate self-seeking individuals. I hate them passionately. Back in the day, nobody knew who their senator was, who their congressman. You know, it was just, you did it because you wanted to. You felt it was your civic duty. So you would attract people who were like citizenless, right? But nowadays, it's been so Instagrammed and sensationalized that you need to find the most fringe, manic thing you can do to appeal to your, you know, extremely
the primary process also has a lot to do with that too.
What's that?
The primary process for inside
of
the has a lot to do with. Again, we're getting way too far into this though. Is there any...
I mean, we're only 45 minutes into it.
Yeah, and I actually do have some stuff about the Capitol that I want to talk about. So
is there any gun news?
Yeah, so let's talk about this with terms of guns.
Okay.
So here's the question, and here's what everybody's thinking. And I'm going to make y'all answer it because I don't want to. Does this show that those disenfranchised people that we've been discussing have the coyotes to do something should like an assault weapons ban or something that we've been afraid of come up? Is this evidence for that, or is this just a nothing burger?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
The problem is it shows that the capacity is there to resist something like an assault weapons ban or lockdowns or some other thing. The capacity is there. The problem is it can only happen en masse. Like you have to have critical mass of people in order for it to work, because if 17 people showed up and done this, they'd have been summarily beaten and arrested.
Right.
You have to have thousands. The only way thousands were able to gather was that the president of the United States put out a tweet, which he's no longer allowed to do, by the way.
Yeah.
So the problem we're going to see, by the way, and I've noticed there's gun groups on Facebook that are already starting to have problems just immediately after this. I run a private group that is for researchers, collectors, and curators. It's not open to the public, sorry guys, but in that private group, several times over, curators of firearms museums have tried to post pictures of 17th century bullshit, and Facebook has blocked them because they posted a picture of a gun.
Oh yeah.
That's where we're at in terms of the censorship quality. And so people are terrified to communicate how they really feel. That could quell the chance that people start working together, but it also is very likely to cause people to hyper radicalize because they stop trusting anything they see.
Right.
Because they know everything's curated.
Yes.
The best disinfectant for extremism is actually the light.
Right.
If you feel like you're a member of a community, it ties you to that community and you have something. Yes, it makes you brave, but also gives you something to lose. And I think things get calmer when people are allowed to express themselves, because moderated views do ultimately win out in free communication, I believe.
Right.
Agreed. 100%.
There's another thing we saw that we were actually discussing earlier that is terrifying, that they shut cell phone service.
Yes. Before the show, we were talking about that because without cell phones, you're basically kind of, if you can, it's like, can you organize everything by email alone? Because that's like the last bastion, but even a lot of email services are monitored now too.
Right.
After this, anybody that tries to organize anything of the sort is going to be looked at very difficult. And by the way, I want to point out so that nobody forgets, the Virginia gun rally was very successful in terms of security, in terms of everybody minding their manners. No NDs, no problems. And then I think a lot of people, just by me mentioning it, are going to point out every single law that they wanted to pass, they passed except for one, and they didn't take it off the table. They just tabled it. And it's going to come back. It's going to come back in another month or two. And so I think we're going to see in a couple months that Virginia gun rally that was so successful, that was nonviolent, resulted in nothing. And I'm sad.
Is Virginia the canary for assault weapons in the United States?
It's worrisome that a very large, very peaceful protest to show exactly how not dangerous this is was still manipulated and still ignored. And it's that, I'm not saying that radicalizes me, but it's going to radicalize others. Like, people are going to see that and say, oh, well, if that's the case, then why participate? Why participate fairly? And I think that is very much a failing of the current government, is to allow peaceful protests to affect what they are doing. And they seem to always wait for violent protests to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Facebook and Twitter have now apparently permanently banned Trump, a sitting president of the United States of America, like, that shows how much power they have. Because how many followers does Trump have on those platforms? Tens of millions?
Yep. Well, to be fair, people should just leave those platforms. I mean, I did not really want to have to go to alternative platforms. They don't tend to work very well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But did I go set up a bunch of alternative platforms the minute that happened? You're damn right I did, because now I can no longer trust that I am receiving all the information that I can receive when I'm on Facebook. And I want real information. I think that I can make a conscious choice for myself, and therefore I want to hear. I will listen to people who I disagree with as much as I will listen to people I agree with, because I need to know what is going on and what is being claimed. And my mind has been changed by people in my life. So I would like to hear them, one way or the other.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, yesterday I mentioned to my girlfriend, I was like, you know what? I'm actually glad that I'm banned on Facebook right now, because if not, I would be like permanently banned and deleted. It actually turned out okay for me, but it is kind of ridiculous. I heard someone mention this morning that this was like the fall of Rome, and they didn't put Trump as the Caesar character, and that they put him as the Catalan. The failed coup that Caesar saw and then used as his model to later do exactly that. I thought that was kind of interesting. And
I don't want a Caesar in either direction. I want an elected official.
Agreed.
Who, by the way, is supposed to officiate, preside, not king.
I could not agree more. However, I thought that it was an interesting parallel.
We have not had a president. We've had a king. Ever since the expansion of the administrative state, it is like the function of the president of the United States is equivalent to a king in the later parts of the eras that we rebelled against,
especially with use of executive orders and ruling in that manner.
Yeah, no, I would joke with my friends when I was working in DC, when I would describe, this is what an ideal monarchy would look like, and they go, "You just described the president." I was like, I was joking, right? But then I stopped and thought about it. I'm like, oh my God, it literally is king.
Yes.
Like, it's a king with a parliament. That's what it is. But what I was holding up earlier for you guys, you need these. All right. You need to have a radio. You need to have a good one. Just get them. It's annoyingly expensive, but if you don't have any friends, you actually don't need this at all. But if you have friends,
well, when I was a child, pre-cell phone, it's really interesting how this went away, but pre-cell phone, your family was supposed to have an emergency plan.
Right.
And you were supposed to have a phone number and physical location that was not your home, where if anything just went to hell, you were supposed to meet your family there. And it was understood. Like, I knew to be at this house on the other side of town, they had this phone number. And if for whatever reason there was a gas main explosion or just anything went wrong, then I would meet my family somewhere else other than our home. Mm-hmm. With cell phones, nobody relies on that anymore, because the idea is you just call everybody and go, "Oh my God, where are you? Are you okay?" But there may be situations in which that's not possible now. So having a plan and maybe having a radio, those sorts of things, not a bad idea.
I totally agree. And I mean, there's cheap ways to get into it. There's expensive ways to get in it. There's licensing, federal licensing, but having the knowledge of how to use them in some kind of situation like Washington, D.C. yesterday may not be a bad idea. I know that we haven't spent as much time maybe talking about the Capitol, but I got to admit, I'm of two minds about it. Swinging this back over in this direction, if I may. On the one hand, Othais, you said very early on in this conversation that this is going to be a bad thing with far-reaching consequences. And I agree. It was a terrible thing, and this will be used by the people who will shortly be in power to remove rights, to enhance lockdowns, and to do other things. At the same token, I got to say, like, there was a part of me that was like, burn it. Like, I know that that's probably unpopular and irresponsible to say, but like, I'm just so fed up with everything. And I got to think there's people out there that feel the same way. Like, I'm not going to, like, I think that I can play a bigger part than just going out in a blaze of glory or anything like that. I think that sharing information is a huge thing, but I got to say that there were two parts of me yesterday, and both parts were pleased and also displeased.
There's part of you that's experiencing frustration, which is, of course, why you would identify with this. It doesn't mean that the problem, I think, is that most people that identify with this don't want it to happen. Most people that identify with this just think it must happen because there is no recourse. Like, there are always going to be people who want to watch stuff burn. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a lot of that here. I think a lot of and it's true the other side too. You know, with BLM and Antifa, a lot of the people that were backing that didn't necessarily want to see things burn, but they also felt frustrated. And I don't know. It's bizarre. I will say I'm very glad, and this is going to seem weird, but I'm very glad it was a government building.
Me too.
Because whenever, I can't remember if it was Antifa or BLM that actually occupied a police station. Mm-hmm. When they occupied the police station, finally, I was just like, well, at least they are now targeting the thing that they are angry about, because burning businesses and other things was very strange. Mm-hmm. The looting and the burning is even if you're like, I really would not be for the violence, but if you're going to be violent, being violent at an inert building that is a government building, or at least the building that you're mad at. If Arby's shot your dad, go burn Arby's. But if Arby's didn't shoot your dad, I mean, you shouldn't still not burn Arby's. There's a court system for that. But at least in narrative, yes, in the sense that the narrative is continuous and self-contained, you should be mad at the thing that you are mad at. And so they didn't go loot, the Wendy's. They went to the government building. So at least that much is consistent, but it's not great that we're at this stage. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In any direction.
Well, the consequences of bad governance should be with the governors, right? So, I mean, I agree with you there. And like the way these people were what I'm concerned about is this just completely severing the link between our alleged representatives and the people.
I think it's already gone, though. Well, a lot of people are saying if the left wing did this, that they would be heroes or whatever. And I honestly don't know, because my intuition is that if the people fight the people, they don't care. But when the people come fight them, they care. That is very worrisome to me.
I guess my anxiety is if this causes the ruling class to suddenly en masse view itself as a ruling class, as a separate estate from the people, then that would cause the worst.
That's the perception right now, is it not? Is that not how they feel about it now?
I'm trying to be charitable.
I don't know any politicians, to be honest with you.
I do. And I'm trying to be charitable. But that's my worry, is that call it the last shellac veneer, right, of representative government being stripped away because of them going, whoa, that's my candy jar, right? That is what I worry is the worst possible outcome. Because if we get that, I mean, obviously the right thing to do here would be self-reflection. but I am under no
I'm here.
Well, anytime you drive somebody to insanity,
yeah.
it doesn't mean that they're innocent, but you should probably be a little concerned. I am sorry, I cannot stop this phone from beeping at me. There we go. They should be a little concerned. I don't know about you, but in my personal relationships, if I anger someone I know, even a stranger, I've had strangers, yeah, everybody's had it. You know, you end up in a random weird argument with a stranger and you're like, what the hell were they thinking?
What do they do? Yeah.
But I don't know about you personally, but for me, hours afterwards, even if it was a complete insane person, I have to sit there and go, what did I do to spark that reaction?
I will be thinking about everything I could have done that led to that.
And then even so, even if they were completely insane, I start to think about what could I have done to mitigate that or to avoid.
How can I lessen that impact? I
don't really seek to punish people. If they're truly insane and they need help, then I guess they need to be committed. But like, I generally look to get along with people. And if something's not working to the point that I'm driving someone else crazy, then there needs to be some level of either introspection or change, or I need to have a conversation. We need couples counseling, me and that other person. You know, I don't see any of those markers in our political process from either side.
No, it is a complete othering.
Right.
And I mean, the degree to which it is an othering, I guess, gives me anxiety, because I have thought it's been an othering since the moment I began my career. But everybody told me that, oh, no, you're just a weird extremist libertarian. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, is that done? Right? Are the points I've been making for years now the rational, obvious outcome?
I don't know. This is too deep. We can't. This is not for our show, I'm afraid to say. We need to. Right. Is there anything other than DC?
Okay, the official 8th time I've been pressed to move on.
And it's Othias, the king of never moving on.
Right. No, this dude will talk. Oh my God.
I say that with all love in my heart. Like
oh no. Yeah. You and I both, Shawn, we talk, in fact, like probably 50% of the episodes we do, we talk about our deep and passionate love for you for like at least 20 minutes afterwards.
It's true.
Yeah, I noticed News has been listening to them and she's like, they talk about you a lot.
Like, Jesus, I listened to this man talk about Carolina mustard for like 2 hours.
I believe it.
But
here we go.
I was interested. But this man can bore your legs shut. I'm telling you. Speaking of,
or he can woo them open.
I love the barbecue sauce. It's wonderful.
You're not baiting me into the Carolina mustard wars.
That's next time. Let's talk about something else that is universally hated: the big banks. Right.
So we're going to do a show full of good news then.
What show did I just sign up for? I'm very confused.
Whatever, man. You took the invite. You didn't ask any questions. So, y'all are both kind of, well, you kind of, but you for sure are in the gun industry kind of. How easy are banks to get along with?
Oh, they're impossible.
Yeah.
I'm constantly nervous.
Yeah. And in fact, I got a note today, an email saying that the bank that I have my accounts for my FFL they're like closing basically. So right. now I have to go do this whole nonsense again.
And I use one of the allegedly pro-gun banks.
Yeah.
And they, so I've, like, for those of you who don't know, I've got one company that I'm on that is an FFL, and another company that doesn't touch any firearms themselves, but firearm parts and accessories. On that one, I'm only allowed to use the bank services, this allegedly pro-gun bank, if I don't sell a firearm receiver. So, like, that's a total nightmare. So I've got 2 different banks I'm having to use. But so there was a proposed rule that was up a while ago. The comment period just ended. I had been thinking about commenting on this, but I was waiting. I was holding back because there's 2 things at issue here. One is this is an administrative agency doing an action, and I am extremely reluctant to throw any of my weight behind that. But 2, there is no doubt that the banks have gotten together to systematically eliminate certain market segments for completely impermissible reasons.
Is this not Operation Choke Point?
Well, it's that, but they learned their lesson and they're quiet now. So for those of you guys who don't know, Operation Choke Point is when a bunch of like state politicians and a bunch of, well, just politicians generally got together, worked with the banks saying, you need to strangle the gun industry and the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, they did it for, what was it, like drugs, prostitution, blah, blah, blah. And then it was a bunch of illegal things and then guns.
Yeah.
Which were legal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was utterly bizarre. Well, there's payday loans were part of Choke Point too, weren't they?
What was?
Payday loans?
I don't remember.
I think so, yes.
But anyway, but let's say like all the illegal stuff and then also guns and some other legal industries.
There's like illegal stuff, potentially usury.
Right.
Guns.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But so that was back when it was done out in the open. But now, look, just try getting a bank account for your FFL that'll do your payment processing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, give it a go.
It's awful.
So there was a rule proposed by the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, which sounds like some guys that you do not need at your barbecue. But it would prevent big banks from denying entire industry segments access to financial services.
I like these guys. I'm inviting them to the barbecue.
I know.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty convoluted, like the way this has come through. But basically, their idea is that the Dodd-Frank Act was designed in part to prevent predatory practices by big banks. And that because banks have denied banking services, supposedly because of these risk factors that they're allowed to take into account, it turns out, in fact, like they investigated it, and the banks were like, the factors they were using to call the entire industry segment high risk were just total garbage. Like oil and gas.
No.
So like oil and gas, like they saw that they denied this whole project to a company, and they were like, okay, well, what were the factors affecting their ability to pay back the loan? And the bank's like, well, they weren't in compliance with the Paris Climate Accord.
You know anybody having a hard time paying back loans selling guns right now?
No.
Well, exactly.
But I mean, to be fair, it's kind of like bail in that regard, where bail used to be a function of flight risk, and now it's just bail as a function of how dirty of a crime you were accused of.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the banks have been. So yeah, under the law, they're supposed to have articulable, metrics-based reasons for denying a customer banking services, and they're supposed to be related to the cost of the bank providing the services to the customer and the risk affiliated in the customer, right? So for payment processing, the risks are extremely low, right? For especially the gun market.
But guns are not highly depreciable assets, so if you don't sell them, you make basically cost on them, and then you go on. Like it's actually, I mean, you can lose money in the sense of overhead, but they're fairly, in terms of stable businesses, they're way better than, say, a restaurant.
Well, and especially the guns you and I are into, right?
Oh, ours appreciate.
Ours appreciate for some random reason. So it's like you can't buy a bad old gun. You can only buy it too early.
Right.
Unless it's a cult, as we discussed earlier. But
or unless it's just fundamentally wrong. You know?
Like half the things I like. But
I see one on the wall there, actually.
Oh, the zip?
No, the gold.
This is BF1 skin Steyr Han.
I love that thing. But hold on, I'm gonna derail this for a second.
No, finish the. If you finish the point, I'll let you talk about the gun.
Okay. All right. The point is, there is.
I hear Sue's laughing in the other room. She knows. She knows it's you.
Yeah, of course she does. The fact is, the banks have just gone nuts, and they've used this little pin needle, right, that they have to that's supposed to be to protect their shareholders, right, from making bad investments, and they've used it to just decide what should exist in the market, right? And so it's not just guns that have been a victim, but also a lot of currency exchange services. What are some other things? Oil and gas, which I like having gas.
I don't. No one around me does either.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, this is not based on individual risk factors. It's based on the bank trying to build a utopia. And so this office basically set up a new rule, which would require, look, they don't say you can't deny these services, but you have to give a metric and explain why the customer fails to meet the metrics.
Right.
And the banks hate this.
No.
They hate this.
Remember we were
so
talking about
weird.
Jacksonian politics earlier, by the way?
Yeah, I killed the bank. Yeah, he should kill it again.
Dude, everything goes in a circle. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, if anybody would like to know what the heck's going on right now, just go look up Jackson, like in detail, not Wikipedia, like in detail.
Right.
Yeah, the Wikipedia is too sanitized.
The real history.
Okay, so now I need to explain the Steyr, though.
Okay, so, well, first of all, as someone who makes my money in this industry, I would like to be able to use online services. But now, Matt is waving a Steyr Hahn in front of the camera. For those of you who don't know, this is an Austro-Hungarian design that actually was not adopted by the Austro-Hungarian army until during World War I, but had been adopted in places like Romania. This is a rotating barrel locking breech. It's actually pretty cool. It looks like it should take a magazine, detachable box magazine at the bottom, but it does not. It uses a stripper clip from the top only, which makes it a little bit wonky to use, but otherwise it's a very modern pistol. It borrows its lines from the Roth Krinka and from, weirdly enough, the Colt 1902 series of pistols. Now, I find them to be very pleasant, and so does Matt, and they also have become a hot collector's item because some fat idiot in the South started talking about them on his show. And so Matt decided to grab one at the gun show. Unfortunately, it had been customized by someone who is apparently the elitist of Bubba's because it is deep blued. The checkering in the wood grips is very fine. And the trigger, hammer, several pins, the lanyard ring, and other things have been actually 24 karat gold plated. It looks like a prestige item from Battlefield 1.
Yes. And what's funny is the gentleman who's the hunchback, red-headed gentleman that sold
You're
me.
going to insult the man that sold you the gun.
I hate that guy. But anyway, he sold me the gun. Said, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, I could put this back original. And he goes, you won't be able to do that. And I go, oh, okay, I won't use my fully equipped shop or anything. You're right. And so he goes away, and then I'm looking at it, and I see the depth of the bluing, and I like look at the gold-plated parts and the hardness of them. It's incredibly well done. And then I go, oh my God, he's right. I can't do it because this is perfect.
Yeah, Matt insulted the poor ginger child and then realized that he was wrong.
Yeah.
I hope he falls down a flight of stairs still, but he was wrong. I was wrong, and I will not. And so, and then
the extractor is gold plated. I'm now realizing.
The extractor is gold plated.
This is like it is an Austro-Hungarian pimp gun, is what it is.
Exactly. This is like the execution pistol if I've ever seen one.
That's amazing. I love it.
But so, and then Control Pew was with me when I got it, and I was like, I can't put this back original, so it kind of doesn't belong in my collection. What am I going to do with it? And he says, you have a gun to permanently be in the background of your videos.
Yes.
And so
it fills me with joy. I love it.
I love that thing.
Oh my God.
But so what do you think about this Office of the Comptroller of Currency? Like, is this going to pass, or the banks? I mean, the banks are powerful. We know this, the banking lobby. Are they going to, is it going to pass?
Nobody's going to surrender power easily.
No, nobody ever does.
I think this will go through.
You think so?
I think this is one of those swan song things that an administration on its way out does to try to, it's one of the things they should have been doing on the whole way. Will it get reversed immediately after the change of power? I don't know. But that's why they do these things at the 11th hour.
Sometimes I feel like we're just in a shell game. Like, you can't keep track of everything that's moving around to your favor or to your deficit. Like, it doesn't. I can't keep up with it all. I'm glad that we have this show where we don't actually talk about what's going on, and instead go on soliloquies about politics.
It's fine.
And the Shire in 1911.
I mean, like, this is that was the issue that everybody has been thinking about this week. So for us to spend an hour on it, like, that's fine.
Everyone's going to be expecting it.
And genuinely, if I could listen to you two talk about issues, like, that's how I would want to consume my media.
You're sweet.
Oh God, can you imagine?
Yeah, I can. I just did.
So the problem though would be if me and Othias were just discussing issues all the time, it wouldn't take too long for our actual
Yeah.
What?
Folie à deux. The insanity of two.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You really did a number on that pronunciation, but anyway.
I'm not French.
Thankfully.
I consider it a crime for Americans to speak French well.
Mon Dieu. Okay, but no, they will be expecting us to have gone on that long thing about
they'll also expect us to talk about firearms news. So what else you got?
They won't be expecting the Mini C and Arsenal on the Steyr Hahn.
That was actually amazing. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Literally, because
and I shot that thing. Oh my god, it's so smooth. It shoots like it shoots.
Back to news.
No, I'm gonna finish with my joke. You jerk. The gun shoots exactly like it looks. It shoots like an '86 Cadillac drives.
I love it.
All right, so
wait, was there a joke there? I missed it.
No, he's masturbating.
Oh, okay.
I like things. I like Star Wars and I like Calvin and Hobbes. I'm going to get T-shirt exposed.
But that was supposed to be a Pitmobile reference because you called it a Pitmobile.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I didn't. Well, neither of you laughed, and I was like, I don't know. It's because
we consciously chose. Like I was looking dead at Shawn, going, "I hope he doesn't laugh," and Shawn was looking at me, going, "I hope he doesn't laugh." We did it.
I was looking directly in your eyes.
Yeah, psychic friendship powers activated.
Not taking my thing. Anyway, all right. Let's talk about something here. I'm gonna prevent you from going on a tirade about Schmidt-Rubin or whatever. The new Savage Impulse.
Yeah.
Did you guys take a look at this thing? It's been making a bit of news lately.
Yes.
What's a ball bearing lockup? What does that mean?
It's basically like a roller lock, except it uses ball bearings to keep the bolt closed. So it's very interesting, used in some European rifles. So it's like not a brand new concept, but it's the first American-made straight pull rifle that is being introduced. So it is pretty cool. So, with a bolt action, you basically lift the bolt handle, pull the bolt back, push the bolt forward, pull down the bolt handle, which is the up and down on the bolt handle locks the action so that when you shoot, it doesn't shoot the bolt through your teeth. Yeah. And straight straight pull is interesting because the bolt handle basically pivots forward and rearward. Forward, it pushes the ball bearings up into a channel that is cut into the action. And when you pull it rearward, it disengages those ball bearings, and then the bolt is allowed to come straight back. So what you're doing is eliminating a couple movements, meaning that for like hogs and things like that, you're able to get on target faster and get shots off faster with increased accuracy because you're not introducing upward and downward movement. You're just going forward and backward. And that should be very smooth.
Interrupting your sight picture.
Exactly.
And you're not even, when you're doing this, you're perceiving it as a straight rear and forward motion. You're not even comprehending the rotational aspect of it.
Yeah. Yes.
You can do it with your palm and just slap.
Is it a rotating lock?
So what it is, it's like he said. It's actually, that's a good way of explaining. It's like a roller lock where there's a wedge, and the these wedge force these ball bearings out into this groove.
Okay, so like a roller or a flapper or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's like a roller, but with balls instead of rollers.
And there's multiple.
And it's circular. It goes all the way around. I guess
it's rolly. It's more rollier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
the rolliest. Yeah, and there's an annular locking surface. And the thing that they're saying is so great about this is it's a lot easier to make hardened balls, right, than it is lugs. And so you wind up with strength that can, on a straight pull, that's able to withstand magnum loads.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because apparently the way they lock into that groove. So like, I think there's 300 Win Mag, stuff like that, calibers that you would not normally see in straight pull.
I haven't seen the design, but if it's spherical, you're probably also less likely to encounter like common shear points, like vertices that are vulnerable to shearing. Because dome spheres, those sorts of things, they don't have those, what would you call those, weak points?
Right.
Yeah.
Stress points, I guess.
I'd call them a weak point.
Yeah.
But I'm not science.
How much is it? Is it a lot of money?
No, it's like $1,499.
$1,400.
That's what?
$1,400.
That's a lot of money.
And today, that's like 2 high points.
Right.
I think you guys underestimate how poor I am.
That's 3 Mosins.
No, I know exactly how poor you are, and you drive a newer truck than me, so I don't want to hear it.
2004.
Mine's 95.
I drive a 2007.
When did you buy it?
2015.
Okay.
Look at you, Mr. Under a decade old truck. It's like
Disgusting.
But yeah, I'm excited about the Savage. I think this is actually really cool. And I think that priced comparatively with other big cartridge hunting rifles, like I think it's...
Did you guys talk about Ruger's pistol last time? I can't remember.
Which one?
The one that takes P90 mags.
You mean Keltec?
Keltec.
Or Keltec. Sorry, I said Ruger. Keltec.
Ex-Floridian? How dare you?
I don't know why I said that.
We did. And it's officially launched now.
It is, yeah. So we can just talk about that for a second, just off the
No, you already talked about it last time. It's fine.
We didn't know what it was or whether it was real. So now we know it's real. The MSRP is $995. We've gotten some more pictures of it. So it is, like I anticipated, basically the whole thing tilts up. You pop a P90 magazine in and then pop it down. And the one thing I can't quite figure out is where the ejection port is. But yeah, $995. I'm not sure anymore whether I need to buy it immediately or whether I just need to buy it at some point.
Well, I'll buy it. I never buy anything immediately, but I'm in on the concept. And the weird thing is, I've always kind of wanted a P90, but I'm like, 5.7 is expensive. And then they did the Ruger pistol, and I was like, 5.7 is still a little expensive. And then we've had the ammo shortage, so I'm like, well, now I'll never see 5.7 again. It's gonna be 5 years.
9mm now, though.
Huh?
It's the same price as 9mm where I am.
Yes, but I won't be able to get plinking play with it ammo for the next 4 years.
Right. Well, and the other issue with
I sat there and I went, well, I guess I'm never getting my PS90. And then Ruger's like, look at our weird cyberpunk pistol that makes no friggin' sense. I'm like, I have to have it. Look at that stupid thing.
Keltec.
I keep saying Ruger.
Yeah.
It's like almost offensive at this point. Check.
Once I can't unsay it.
Give our state what it's due.
What are we doing?
There it is. Oh, no, you're looking at the Savage.
It's a lot of balls. It's not just 2.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's annular. It goes all the way around.
I've seen this design somewhere in history, and now I can't remember.
It's like with that company that starts with an R in Europe.
Yeah, but before that, I've seen a ring of. I thought you were saying 2, but I've seen rings like that before, but I can't remember where. Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Assuming there's a cone that pushes them out. Yeah. They didn't give like the detailed specs.
No.
But yeah, so yeah, that's what's going on there with the Savage. Yeah, straight pull, whatever. All right. Joe Biden. Ooh.
Who?
He's picked his attorney general. Oh. And here's a blast from the past for you. It's Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, step on up.
It's like sticking an eye in poking a stick in Mitch McConnell's eye.
Yeah. I mean, and so this was the guy, right, at the end of Obama's presidency that was supposed to be so eminently middle of the road, so apolitical, right, that he was a appropriate replacement for Scalia. And so now he's been selected for the egregiously political position of Attorney General. So that tells me that someone was lying, right?
Yeah. A politician was speaking, so there was lies being told.
Right. But still, even so, plenty of progressives are going to be angry at Biden for this, moderate pick. But when it comes to our stuff, when it comes to guns, this guy's anything but moderate.
Yes. In fact, he's pretty anti-gun, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he voted to overturn one of the rulings that vacated DC's handgun ban. He doesn't believe, he's on record as saying he doesn't believe there is an individual right to keep and bear arms, which would make it the only collective right in the entirety of English jurisprudence.
Right.
So
we wrote 9 of these in the Bill of Rights, and all of them were individual except for this one for no reason.
So weird.
Yep. But
it's a militia. Yeah, they were clarifying that you could also use it to be a militia. Like it wasn't. Yeah. They were clarifying that it wasn't just you. You could also band together if you want to.
Right, and that was it was also in fashion back then to use those clauses. They were just like,
oh no, I really suspect that when they wrote the Second Amendment, somebody's just like, you know how people are like, they always talk about hunting,
right?
I really believe that somebody at the time was just like, so this is about like, what if they just think it's about hunting or there's some other use case in which somebody in the room like, hey, if we just write you're allowed to keep and bear arms, people are going to be like, yeah, but that's just for hunting or something. And they're like, I got it. We'll put in so they can form a friggin' militia, as in the people be an army.
Right.
Like they wrote in, no, this is for war, yo. Like you could do this straight up.
And then I'm sure the argument was, but everyone's going to remember, we literally just shot our government. Like there's no way they're going to.
Yeah. How could they think it was for something other than defending themselves
against their government? Right. So, but anyway, yeah. So Merrick Garland forgot that part of his, or he didn't watch the same Schoolhouse Rock we did. I don't know, but whatever. But I mean, I think luckily the AG, it's not the most material thing, right? I mean, what are it could be worse.
What's an AG capable of doing, Matt?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, a lot. You know, they're responsible for a lot of administration. Administrative agencies get a lot of their directives handed down from the Attorney General.
What kind of administrative agencies?
Not the good kind.
How many letters?
What's the good kind? No, I don't want to. I'm not going to say it directly because I know how the people are. I want to say it when it is going to happen.
Okay,
you know?
That's fair.
Because I don't know if you guys know, but on Fudbusters, all I do is yell at people for like.
Matt, I want to sell Fudbusters for a second because Matt created that from a conversation with me because several conversations, repeatedly, people were freaking out about stuff that was not a big deal or radically misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And then also ignoring things that were a big deal or tangentially related in a bigger way than they realized. And you could never quite, like, the narrative was always one, like, the gun, unfortunately, the gun infosphere has become very panicky.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of energy chasing around things that don't do anything. And I think
it's a pants shitting competition.
Right. And I think that does a lot to hurt the community because it wastes our energy that we could be putting elsewhere.
Right.
It would be very nice if we knew exactly what target to hit and how hard to hit it. And so we were talking about that, and that's why Matt created Fudbusters. At the time, he thought
you named it though.
Yeah, I just threw that out as an option. Yeah. But at the time, it was supposed to be tackling misconceptions within the industry because a lot of people are self-regulating. They don't understand what's going on in the market or what's going on in the law, rather. And so the gun stores do this all the time. Like they require you to have an FFL to ship them a gun. That's not a legal requirement. You can only the receiving person has to have the FFL in this scenario. There's even times when the receiving person doesn't have to have an FFL at all if it's you and you're shipping to you. But that's the whole. So, and there's a lot of people that are concerned about this. And so I was like, well, you know these answers. You're an attorney. You should get out there and talk about them. So he starts the project, and now all it's been has been like, guys, seriously, we're not on fire. Stop. Like it's supposed to be for you to sort of tell gun stores and other people to get off their butts and start following the law as it is instead of expanding it. And now it's become you yelling at the gun industry that they're freaking out over too much. Like it should. So
the latest thing, on the latest thing, and this is not in the show notes, but I think we should hit on this for just a second. The latest thing that I'm covering in Fudbusters is there's these gun tubers, and so the gun tuber does the thing based on nothing, and then all these people write articles based on it, and then ARFCOM is going nuts, right? And everybody believes it, and everybody's outraged. So now.
The AR-15 doesn't have a receiver.
No, not that one. I already did that one. This is new. In one of the stimulus bills, they passed a law which creates a small claims court for copyright infringement. Okay?
What?
You're wondering, how is this going to get to guns, right? That's what you're wondering.
Yes.
Me too. So some guys that are very popular go out there and say, this law that creates this small claims court for copyright infringement is going to become a mini ATF that is going to make it illegal to 3D print anything.
What?
And his logic was, if Colt sees that you've printed out an AR lower, Colt is going to tell the police to look for those printed AR lowers at gun ranges and seize them and draw you before the copyright small claims court. And this is the grand scheme, that 3D printing is dead because of the copyright small claims court.
Huh.
Okay.
So the issue here is every YouTuber in the world has an aggressive, violent misunderstanding of what a copyright is. And is scared of it, right? Because they keep getting content strikes.
Right.
And they also believe that any intellectual property exists for the AR-15. Actually, you know what? You know what's the sole piece of intellectual property related to the AR-15? The word AR-15. Only Colt can use that. The design? And also, that's patent. That's not copyright. Copyright is for... Oh my God. I mean, I'm blown away. But so yeah, this is me getting into the thing. But yeah, so there are people who are, doing the pants crapping competition, saying 3D printing was killed by Congress because Congress, literally, this was just a way for smaller guys who have copyrights to be able to not go bankrupt by enforcing their claims.
Right. I have to do this all the time. Do you know how many copyright suits I've never been able to really get into because the costs are too high for me to get into them, and yet people...
For you, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a wonderful thing because, frankly, as an individual, I don't believe intellectual property is a real thing, but I will make money fighting for people's intellectual property. I'll happily do that, which Matthias knows very well. But so anyway, I'm just like, how did we get here? There's all this crap going on that is actually affecting us. And yet I'm sitting here and it's like, no, guys, that's the copyright small claims court.
Crazy.
That's the ATF over there. That's the copyright small claims court.
Oh, God.
It takes talent.
Yeah.
And I think in this sphere, I am egregiously untalented because I can't get it.
Damn, man. The news depresses me this week.
There's so much going on. We don't need to panic over stuff that's not real.
Yeah,
we're going to get outrage fatigue. Shawn, you talk about this all the time.
I do. I've got it. Even yesterday, I was just like, okay, whatever. Whatever, man. That lady got shot in the neck by some form of law enforcement inside the Capitol building, crawling through a window with an entire DC SWAT team behind her. I'm like, wow, guy, you could have accidentally hit the SWAT team.
That would have been funnier.
Yeah. It's just like the whole thing, man. It's funny how
I do
indifferent.
privately believe that was an ND.
I watched video.
Have you seen the video?
I did, but I still think it was like a panicked ND.
I feel like he was doing that like...
He moved aggressively, changed his line of sight.
It almost looked like he was doing the bullet huck. You know what I mean? Like where you like push the gun forward as you're like... There's a little bit of like pushing it out. Like I gotta go. I'd have to watch it again, but it really did look like he tried to throw the bullet. You know what I mean?
Yep. Right.
I did not
get an extra FPS out of this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's like it was weird that he like pushed his hands out and then fired as he was still extending his hands. That was really weird. So I guess I could see it being an ND.
Right.
But I could also just see him as like he looked really panicky.
Yeah, he did,
he did.
I don't know. I can't wait to see where that one goes. Probably nowhere.
Probably nowhere because we have no accountability for law enforcement in this country. Anyway, moving on. The French have gone Glock. All right. But they're both giving me the worst look.
I know that this is a fetish.
What?
You and the French guns.
Oh, I'm not even going to answer that because that's rude. But
Chinese cartoons and French guns.
Stop it. Stop.
Hey.
The French army has switched to the Glock 17, And they're saying it's for a host of reasons. I know what the real reason is. But so, yeah, the French, they're ditching the 1950 Châtellerault pistol and the PAMAS G1, which is just a Beretta 1992F made at Saint-Étienne.
Oh, God, a great Italian handgun.
Right, it's a nightmare. They've adopted the Glock 17 Gen 5 as the new handgun. And people are saying it's because of the reliability problems and the ancientness of the Châtellerault. I think it's because the French, in all of their wisdom, nuked their arm industry. And so there is no Châtellerault, there is no Saint-Étienne. You cannot get a brand new PAMAS.
Yeah, right. Because, where are they going to get them from? Who's making them?
Yeah, no, so for those of you who don't know, and this is going to be a really, like, I'm sorry, other French arms historian out there in the world, but I'm going to give the really short version, where basically French had all these state-owned arms manufacturers, and then the French government is like, you can't do anything. And so they're like, we're drowning. And then a private company stepped in and said, don't worry, we'll save you, took them over, and was like, okay, government, can I please sell these to other countries? And the government said, no. And the private company said, we're drowning, and then drowned. So
that's actually that happened before in Britain with Webley and Scott.
Yep.
Interesting.
British legislation around Webley and Scott was so much so that imported firearms were cheaper than Webley and Scott. So if Webley and Scott tried to export, they would have to compete with whoever was local to that country, right, tariff system or whatever, you know. So Webleys were not popular overseas because they were so expensive. But then in their own country, they were also too expensive because they were being punished more than the importers.
Right.
And then all sorts of firearms legislation. And then, you know, Britain's only so big. I mean, they had an empire, but, you know, then you get into exporting.
Right.
So Webley and Scott suffered gravely. Even before World War I. World War I gave them sort of a bump, and then they suffered gravely again all the way to World War II, and then another bump on selling. Interesting, a bump on selling a gun that they had made for the government that the government then stole and made it themselves and never paid them for. And then they luckily got to make them for the government after they had invented them for the government and never got paid. And then post-war, the Mark IV, the Mark IV 38, the Enfield No. 2 Mark I is clearly a copy of it.
I have two of I have one of each. I have an Enfield and a Webley, and there's like no argument.
Yeah, the British government is just like, we're not paying you crap. I understand their argument because
what they argue is just a smaller Mark VI.
Well, it's actually the Mark IV. If you think about it, it's the 4.55 Mark IV existed before World War I,
right.
And in the 30s you come out with the Mark IV, but in 38-200.
Yeah.
So for them, they're like, this is already available. We can just copy this anytime. But that's, you know, they did that after Webley had done the groundwork on developing a 38-200 pistol for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're like, we're gonna take it by. And you're like, okay, so you guys aren't paying
your gun. This is your gun.
You're not allowing your citizens to buy from us. You're not. And when you do allow them to buy anything, that you reward people from sending it in overseas, we have a hard time competing abroad because of the natural restrictions of shipping abroad. And yet you somehow want us to still be here to make arms for you during wartime.
Right.
And then, of course, post World War II, there's no hope for them, you know. So we're looking at a modern version of that in France. It's just they've unsupported their own arms industry.
Well, it's so delayed because they've been like Guillat was who took over at Saint-Étienne. Like it was like a decade ago they caught on fire and drowned. And I think the thing is we're noticing this because the French like won't throw anything away. So they were able to just pretend that they still had an arms industry for like 10 years.
Jeez.
This is fascinating.
It really is. Is it unintended consequences, or was this like overall they just didn't care?
They did not think about the fact that they were like, it's not our fault you're not making money. Also, you're not allowed to make money.
Right.
To be fair, they do it here too if they could.
Yeah. I know they were allowed. And so before people freak out on me, they were allowed to do certain business, right? But the noose was amazingly tight.
You see this with a lot of companies, though, because there's like the U.S. version of a lot of gun companies, and the U.S. version is often healthier and more adaptive than the foreign company where they're actually making the product.
Right.
You see all sorts of fights between. I don't want to out anybody, but you know, talking to people that I know, there's all sorts of fights between the U.S. version of this product and the European version of that product. You know. and the U.S. are very aggressive marketers. I don't know anybody from Steyr, so I guess I could mention Steyr as an example because I have a theory, which is that the Steyr M9 series of pistols, which they're now on to the L2 series. Fantastic, brilliant guns that have been available theoretically for well over a year, but the importation of them was practically nothing because Steyr Europe, like Steyr America, is like, we need to start marketing these and create demand for them. And Steyr Europe is probably at that point going, yeah, but we have all these A1s sitting around unsold. If we push the A2s, then everybody's going to be like, oh, I don't want the A1. And it's not true. A lot of people prefer the A1s anyway. But the point being is like, well, you have like no market penetration right now. Maybe you should get market penetration. Now, of course, they were rewarded because they ended up with a gun buy-up. Like the panic meant that all the A1s sold regardless because people wanted whatever they could lay their hands on. And now you're starting to see the A2s. I mean, I had to scrounge to find an A2 9 months ago. Now they're everywhere because they're importing them finally. So it's very interesting to see.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I do. And also, just as an aside, I love the Steyr A1.
It's fun.
I actually prefer the A2, but
really?
They're nice.
Well, you're wrong. But anyway, universal background check goes into effect in Virginia.
We
have one in Colorado. It's like done nothing.
I don't know what that means.
What? Say again?
I'm just South Carolina. We have private sale.
Yeah.
Don't you need a handgun permit though?
No, that's North Carolina. That's worst Carolina.
Yeah. Okay. No, you have some weird permitting thing over there though, don't you?
We don't have open carry because that would. We try to get it. We don't have constitutional concealed carry, and we don't have open carry, and both of those. Both of those are being held back by what I would call futtery. Mm. So in South Carolina, I remember the open carry thing comes up all the time. I mean, like literally people have been trying to pass it. It gets a little bit more momentum every time. And on open carry, they don't like literally I will be in the gun shop and the good old boys are just like, but if you wear your gun on your hip, then they know you got it. And you're like, yes, that would be open carry. They're in environments and like, well, you can't be walking around in the ghetto with a gun on your hip because they'll know you got it. And you're like, would you go walk through the ghetto with the gun on your hip? And like, no, I would never do that.
Okay, so I must enforce my conception of what is tactically sound upon you.
Right. Like, it's just one of those weird things. They're like, well, they're not going to make you open carry. You don't have to open carry. But that would be rude. Like they just can't. It's a Southern gentility thing where it's just like, but that would look rude.
Well, they don't comprehend that you can feel that way as I do. I feel that open carry is a bit silly and rude aside from in certain situations, but I fight aggressively for it to be the right.
Yeah, amazing. A lot of things that we have a right to do that we don't actually do. Like there's a lot of things we could be doing as citizens every day that would make us look like lunatics and nobody would like us, so we don't do it.
Yeah.
The other thing is on concealed carry. The problem with concealed carry is there's so many trainers that make their money on that in South Carolina.
Yeah.
They poison the well every time because they're like, but I won't make any money. And then everybody's like, my cousin does that and he won't make any money. I don't want him borrowing money from me. But
and that's why we need to keep the gas station attendants. That's why you can't pump your own gas.
It actually is very comparable to keeping gas.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's called creative destruction. You're destroying some things because people have a right to do things. That's me collapsing the definition of that concept, but whatever.
Their penalties in Virginia are quite hefty. Fine of $2,500 or a year in jail.
A year in jail for transferring a firearm without using the anointed gatekeeper of the Second Amendment, that being the holy federal firearms licensee.
It makes me mad, especially in Colorado. Like all the FFLs around here, FUDs, you should bust them in the head. They won't even do private transfers, most of them. And if they do, they charge.
Because they want you to pay their stupid markup.
They pay exorbitant fees, like $75, $100 to do a private person-to-person transfer.
It's very strange. I mean, we don't have that culture here. And I ran into it when I've been out of the state, and I find it to be very bizarre. In South Carolina, no one wants to use an FFL. Like the FUDs, the old guys, they're like, the minute like an FFL gets involved, they're just like, I don't want to.
Yep.
Like it's a complete distrust for government paperwork.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I'll go somewhere else. And everybody's like, yeah, all the old guys wanted to do it through FFL, even though it's a private sales state. I'm like, what? Like where I'm at, all the old guys are like, no, nuts. I had a buddy, like, and thankfully it's not my transaction. And I'm gonna be dead honest. You can subpoena me all you want. He died in a car accident, and I miss him, but you can't get him. So he was from Georgia, had a CNR, came to a gun show here, and there was a guy at that gun show that had a gun he wanted. So he buys the gun, gives him the cash, and then after he gives him the cash, he hands over his CNR. And the guy goes, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm from Georgia." And the guy just like puts his hands over his ears and is like, "La la la la," and just walks away. It's just like that's our old guys, you know.
I love that.
Yeah. Sorry, you can't. A, I didn't do it. Yeah. I'm not from Georgia. B, dead. Both of them. One of old age and one of a car accident. So I can't help you. But like, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen because I'm just like, awesome. This is the definition of everything I deal with. Like,
no doubt.
In Florida, we have a weird middle ground between what you're both describing. The old people don't want to go to an FFL because they charge money. They want to do it in a police station parking lot.
What?
Oh my god!
That's like the thing here. When you go on, the local arms traders. That's what I'm saying. No, they're like, oh no, we'll meet at the Riviera Beach PD, and I'm like, no. You know what they do to people who look like me over there? No, I'm not doing it. And so I've had people refuse because I'm like, hell no. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to, because I'm going to look at the gun and I'm going to dry fire. I'm going to play with it before I give you cash for it. And I'm not doing that in no cop shop, sir. No, thank you. I do it at the Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. It is a weird thing. I'm like, well, you want to do it in the parking lot where there's probably not very many cops and mainly only administrators and dispatch? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Also, right. But here we do have a lot of lazy cops that hang around the station.
Dang.
But no, I'm comfortable at the Dunkin' Donuts because one, it's kind of funny. Two, there's people going in and out constantly, so you're not gonna, whatever. And three, I don't have to. I don't have to go to the FFL. I don't have to go to the cop shop. I don't want to. Don't make me do it. That's stupid. Stop it.
Yeah, I agree. I bought gun stuff in the Home Depot parking lot the other day. It was amazing.
I remember the first time, and actually I've been trading guns in Florida for a while. I remember the first time somebody was like, I'm going to want you to fill out this private sale contract. And I'm like,
what?
Why?
I had there was one of those guys, he was like a transplant from New Jersey that showed up at one of our gun shows. And I felt kind of bad for him, but like he had like a Winchester Model 12 or something. I was like, okay, I'll take this right price. And so it was the right price. But then he was like, well, I want a copy of your driver's license. Like, oh, are you an FFL? And he goes, no. And I was like, oh, then no. Like, he was just like, he's like, well, then I can't sell you that. And I was like, well, you can. You're just not gonna. Like, so it became a whole thing. I was just like, bye. And then I watched like 3 other people do the same thing. We're like, oh, are you an FFL? Like, he had to answer it so many times. I think he was going insane. And I was like, why do you need that if you're not an FFL? And he's just like, well, in case you do a crime. I'm like, what? Like, we don't have a registry. What are you talking? Like, it's so foreign. And I was trying to understand him. And I was just like, you don't have any duty. Like, I can't sue you with what you do with my information after this. You know what I mean? Like, with an FFL, I have their business. They have a process. You know what I mean? Like, they have rules. You're just some guy. Like, it was really weird.
It's very
compliance signaling. It's weird.
Yeah.
But okay, so I want to speed things up. Shawn is going to miss his dance recital. So
yeah, I've got ballet lesson.
Yeah. So Ohio governor, next subject. Sorry, guys. On Monday, Governor DeWine of Ohio fulfilled one of his campaign promises to sign legislation to repeal the state's duty to retreat law. I think that's great. And this also kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with the whole Capitol thing. Like the right of law enforcement to use deadly force is very rarely different from the right of individuals. Right. It's all based on a rational fear of grievous bodily harm. And so imposing, like, that's a rational limiting principle. Imposing a duty to retreat, I think, is extremely immoral because it flips that presumption.
Mm-hmm.
And do either of you have anything particularly great to say about that? Or do we want to get on the last thing that's going to be more problematic.
I think
I could put one challenge out there, which is if you're the kind of person who I think duty to retreat is actually exemplified by the shooting of the woman at the event yesterday.
Right.
Because she was not armed. She was not a clear and present threat to anybody. But she was not allowed to be where she was and was breaking and entering into what was a public building, but we don't know what's on the other side. So what's interesting to me is the number of people I know who believe in duty to retreat who are also okay with her being shot.
Right.
So which is it? You know what I mean? Like,
well, those people don't understand that cops don't have a license to kill.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting juxtapiposition right there. If you want to talk about the retreat one way, and I'm not even trying to weigh, I just something to think about because we got to keep it, but it stands out in my mind.
Yeah,
so
very much so.
Okay.
Here in Colorado, we don't have preclusion. We don't have any duty to retreat. We have castle doctrine, which is, I guess, similar to stand your ground, which is what they were preaching about that Ohio had just done. But I'm actually surprised that he signed it. It's not often that politicians follow through on any of their promises, especially when it's not something that he is has personal investment in the issue. In fact, he's
to be fair,
reasonably anti-gun, right?
To be fair, he was served it up on a platter, so it's not like it was too hard. But good's good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is really great for the people of Ohio.
I know.
Happy clap. Good job, Ohio.
Good job.
Right, let's wrap it up. We got one more?
One more. And sorry, guys. Kyle Rittenhouse has pled not guilty to all of his charges.
What? I was sure he was going to plead guilty.
But actually, you'd be surprised the way they run this crap now.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
It depends on what they charged him with, right?
Right.
If they charged him with some sort of illegal possession and it happened to be illegal in that state, then I guess he would be guilty of that. But he's pleading not guilty to, what kind of murder? They were charging him with murder, right?
Yes. 2, I think.
Yeah. Murder 2. Which by the way, guys, you have to look it up in that state because it's probably different from your state. Every state has their own murder definition. But yeah, and of course he's arguing self-defense. He's pled not guilty to all charges. His lawyers are arguing that he was in fear of his life, which I probably believe at that point.
Well, from the evidence we have, he looked very much in fear of his life.
He looks a bit spooked.
He did attempt to retreat multiple times.
He also attempted to surrender to Kenosha cops, and they told him to go home.
Right.
So he went home.
Yeah, so he went home. But I think it's interesting, and the whole thing, and I've been saying this before, the whole thing that's going to be really interesting about this is that for you to claim self-defense in most jurisdictions, your hands got to be clean all the way to the beginning. So the whole investigation is going to be on what happened the times where we don't have video. And I think it'll be very interesting to find out. I do weep for Mr. Rittenhouse. I'm sure this is like just a horrible situation to be in. I don't think any young man should have to deal with any of what he's had to deal with. But, we're going to find out. Well, presumably, we're going to try to find out. God knows if we'll actually find out what went on.
In terms of self-defense, the question would be whether or not he agitated to be attacked.
Did he acquire the situation is the question.
Yeah, but
By the way, there is video evidence of him not being aggressive and the gentleman who ultimately first attacked him being very aggressive earlier in the evening.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but we have to go all the way back to the beginning. And so we just don't know that. He could have acquired aggression and then said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then it's kind of a toss-up, right? Whether, whether we can claim self-defense. What I'm hoping is that he was behaving rationally and peacefully the whole time, and so that he can put this behind him.
When you say he has to be clean, he has to have been non-threatening or has to have been nice?
Because not have acquired the situation.
I don't know what that means. Because my problem is, do you invite a violent situation when you call someone an idiot? Do you invite a violent situation just arguing with people,
Generally, and I'm speaking from like the federal standpoint, a 50-state survey standpoint, you have to go into fighting words doctrine to have your words, unclean your hands.
Yeah.
You have to and some of the classic ones are like speaking, referring to infidelity with another man's wife, that type of thing.
Well, sorry. I was going to say, and even that, depending on the case, doesn't matter. If you think about George Zimmerman, he was the initial aggressor. Eventually, he was exonerated, I believe, or
Yeah,
nothing bad
the
happened.
only thing that I've heard that looks like it could stick. Well, the only thing I've heard that looks to me like it would be on the surface criminal has been his acquisition of the firearm. I believe they said it was like a straw purchase, or he admitted to a straw purchase.
Perhaps, but
is that still the case, or
I don't know.
I don't know. And then I was going to say also Michael Dwight, I believe, the guy who was yelling at somebody's girlfriend because she was parked in a handicap spot. The guy comes out, pushes him down on the ground, doesn't make any more advancements towards him.
Yeah.
After a few seconds, Dwight shoots him and kills him, and he will be in prison for a long time.
Yep.
And Dwight's moving very quickly, though. That's the hard part, because Dwight, I don't think Dwight saw that the situation was over. I think he was so slow
right
on his drawn presentation. He was so much in his own little world that it's
he went
hard
up and just saw the target.
Yeah,
it's hard to see whether he felt it was defensive or retaliatory to himself. But boy, from the outside, it looked like
the outside looked bad.
Well, and I'll tell you, I've watched his interrogation at the police department, and he signed his own prison sentence in that interrogation. Yeah,
I actually didn't see that.
Oh, it's I don't even remember the name of the YouTube channel.
So he squawked pretty good.
Oh yeah, he was just. I was the whole time I was just like, oh, cool, all right, well, that's the opposite of what you should have said. That's the opposite of what you should have said.
To me, if you watch the Rittenhouse, and this is just me, if you watch the Rittenhouse footage, you can argue about whether he should have been there, had the gun, blah, blah, blah. Like, you could say a lot for that. For each individual shot he makes, to me, it looks like he was in threat of bodily harm.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
by people who want, like, very much to harm him. And then there's a shot that he does not take because the dude looks like he is not going to bodily harm him. Then the dude
loses his bicep.
And he shoots. Yeah, I mean, so it's very interesting, but there's that clarity of like threat. Oh shit, you're not a threat. Oh, now you're a threat. You know, like it was very much like assessing whether or not someone was a threat before pulling the trigger.
Oh yeah, like I mean, who cares where he was? Who cares how he got the gun? If it's illegal, charge him for it and take him to trial over that.
If he committed a straw purchase and all that, then charge him for the straw purchase.
Exactly.
But I don't think that's a moral crime. But I think if you were charged with a straw purchase, I think it would be the duty of the jury to nullify that. But look, I'm a rehabilitationist. I am all about serving your time and to rehabilitate yourself. I think that this kid has had enough punishment based on what I know, and I hope, it is my sincere hope that he was not acquiring the situation and that he can try to now begin trying to live a normal life. That's my sincere hope. I don't know what happened. And you know what? If he did acquire that situation, and if he, and his lawyer does a good job and he still gets punished for it, then I think that that's what justice is. But I don't know whether he did or not. I'm just saying, in my heart, I hope that he gets to put this behind him.
Yeah.
The only way I can see that he's acquired the situation, like if acquiring the situation would mean that you've somehow provoked someone to attack you,
pushed or shoved or something.
The reason I believe he was attacked at first, I do not know. My belief is that he was attacked first because he looked juvenile and had a firearm. I think that's why that gentleman.
He was a bully.
Like the dude fixated on Kyle because he was very young. He looked nervous. And he had a firearm, and that was like that felt like the strongest person that he could go after. And I say this as someone who grew up being very tall and very nerdy, which made me a safe target for a lot of bullies because, this guy looks big, as in has a firearm, but also I know he's a nerd. In Kyle Ritten's house, he looks kind of like a young kid, maybe nerdy looking kid. So that's your opportunity to front as if you've taken down a big man when in reality you're taking down a small man.
And you see that guy who was fronting with him is a fundamentally short person, and we know that they struggle very much.
I wouldn't even go that far. I just think that guy had been amping for a fight from the previous footage. That guy had been amped for a target.
He was juicing, for sure.
And he picked one that he thought would give him the least threat and maximum yield, and he turned out to be very wrong.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and I mean, all the videos I've seen of Rittenhouse, I think that he will have no problem at least reasonably articulating an immediate and unavoidable fear of death or serious bodily harm. Now, the question is...
He's a very sympathetic defendant.
Yeah, without question.
I don't think the case has been handled very well by some of the parties involved. But
by any of the parties.
Well, because by the incredible nationalization of the issue, he's been denied his right to a trial by a jury of his peers.
Yeah.
Because he no longer has a peer because he's a public pariah.
Right.
And so, and I also think in those situations where we've handled it so aggressively wrong, that a person is entitled to, to be found not guilty.
Yeah, it also seems like sometimes his defensive team, it's just, I'm at a complete loss for what their strategy is or what they're doing. Like, there's been times when that ball was dropped, and then,
right.
To be fair, he had a very public personality that was defending him that is now gone off the deep end in a lot of ways. So, I mean, to the point of being sued by his partners. So,
right.
I don't know about you, but if I'm up for murder charge, like 3 murder charges, I really don't want my defense attorney being sued by his partners. That's not a really good look. You
don't want a TV lawyer, guys.
Nope.
I mean, like, this is just my personal opinion. You don't want a TV lawyer.
It worked for OJ. You guys like my fidget spinner?
I was gonna call you out on it. Yeah, I was gonna say, guys, he's playing with a fidget spinner right now.
That's like 2002. Is it a knife?
It's a knife. Yeah, I saw him draw it like 3 times.
A folding knife with a fidget spinner on it.
It's the dumbest thing that's ever been invented.
Oh, where'd you get that?
The ball.
eBay.
Oh, how much was it?
$11.
No.
I need it.
Okay, I'll send you a link. You need.
Cool,
you do need it. It's the dumbest thing I own.
No.
And I own High Points.
He's gonna cut the webbing of his hand.
All right, we'll free you, Shawn.
All right, awesome. No, it was amazing as always, Othais. I definitely love the viewpoints that you bring to stuff because it's very measured and very balanced in a world of outrage, and I always appreciate that. And having you and Matthew at the same time was a pleasure. That sounded so weird.
Everybody thinks I'm a lunatic, so I don't know.
It was a very engaging conversation.
It was.
Yeah,
it was. I loved it.
How do you wrap it up?
That's up to Matt. He's the boss now.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah. All right, Othais, where can people find you, and what good are you to them?
If you like old guns, you can find me at candarsenal.com, Charlie and Romeo Senel.com.
Of all the ways that you could have said that, you chose the way that actually made it more difficult.
Yeah. Well, good, because you don't deserve the clicks.
I was at a doctor's appointment, and the woman was like, all right, what's your email? And I started spelling it out, Charlie Alpha. I mean, not that email, but I'm doing
example.
So I started she's like, whoa, and I got through like 3 letters. She's like, hold up. And she's like, and she starts saying the word like Charlie. And the woman in the next little cubicle thing over was like, honey, no.
Oh, that's awesome.
Longest email address.
So check out Othais for sure. His content is great. And if anything,
by the way,
what?
The channel is not political.
No, and he does an incredible job of divorcing that from its content. And even if you don't like old guns, he has a wonderful voice to fall asleep to. I've done it many times.
Oh my God.
For real, dude, that would be a great market segment for you if
How
you would
your girlfriend feel about that?
I don't care. But anyway, so she's met you. She likes you. She likes your voice too. If anything, it's how do I feel about how much she likes your voice. But yeah, that's where he's at. I've got a new Fudbusters video coming out on that stupid copyright thing. Shawn, you got anything to tell the people?
No, man. Just I don't know. Get comms, and watch your back in the streets.
Get comms and a can of 545.
Exactly.
And we'll be seeing you soon.
Sounds good.
All righty. Good night, everybody.